Fear not, I have redeemed you. I have summoned you by name, and you are mine. A great promise from the Lord that runs back many, many, many generations, all the way to the book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verse 1, where the Lord makes this promise to his people. Fear not, do not be afraid. I have summoned you by name. I have redeemed you. I have summoned you by name, and you are mine. Hey, we have over the past couple of weeks around here been talking about Christ in your crisis. That in the midst of all that we're going through right now, that Christ has not abandoned us. We have this promise from Jesus, I am with you always till the close of this age. And over the past couple of weeks, we've talked about in the midst of crisis how we felt the weight of disappointment and frustration over the past few weeks or past few months. Each and every one of us can probably point to at least one moment where we have been disappointed or frustrated over an event that didn't happen or something that did happen that we wish wouldn't have. We've all been frustrated. Last week we kind of talked about the selfishness that we're observing in lots that's around us right now, and some of it even ourselves. When we're honest with ourselves, we all have this propensity right now to turn inward on ourselves, and hopefully we're encouraged last week to be reminded to look outward. This week we're talking about fear, that there's a very real fear that has been present for each of us to some degree over these past number of months. And as I was thinking about that, I remember back to an early COVID moment when I was in the grocery store. And when the shelves were bare, the toilet paper was out, the meat counter was almost completely empty. And as we were kind of all experiencing life in masks for the first time, just kind of feeling this heaviness of fear in the eyeballs around me in the grocery store as we walked a little further from each other, kept the distance from each other, just as eyeball connected with eyeballs. There was just this weight and sense of fear. And so, as we've kind of been living in that, maybe to either a lesser degree or more of a degree now, as fear has kind of been our reality to some degree over these past few months, what we want to speak into that this week is this great promise from God's Word as we do life together as God's people. Over and over in the Scriptures, there's this reminder to fear not, to be not afraid from the Lord as He speaks that into our lives. And certainly fear is real, and there are things that we are afraid of, but we're reminded in the midst of our fear that we have a God who meets us right where we are. In our Lutheran tradition, in this work we call, that's been handed down to us called the Small Catechism, as Martin Luther unpacks some meaning for the Ten Commandments as they've been handed down to us, each and every one of the Ten Commandments in Martin Luther's explanation there begins with these words: we should fear, love, and trust God so that we either do or don't do this thing. We got to fear and trust God so that, and the implication there is that as we stand in awe of God, as we fear Him, there's nothing else we need to be afraid of. In the midst of our fear, we can look to the one that we can trust and hold on to, His grace and His mercy. And so God's promise has always been and will always continue to be, in the midst of fear, that we don't need to fear anything because he has redeemed us, He has summoned us, He has called us by name. So maybe you're feeling a little bit of that in your life, or maybe have felt that. Certainly we may end up feeling that a little bit more to some degree in the days that are ahead. But as you hold on to this promise of God that's been handed down for generations, as the Lord spoke these words all the way back in Isaiah chapter 43, verse 1. Fear not, do not be afraid. I have redeemed you. I bought you back. I have summoned you by name, and you are mine. The Lord isn't waiting for you to be less afraid or to behave better or to get it all together, to pursue you and love you and know you by name and remind you that you belong to Him. He's done that for you already. He's come after you. He's called you by name. He knows you. He's bought you back so that you'd live in that promise today. So God be with you, that you be reminded that you belong to the one who has called you out of darkness into His marvelous light. God's got a hold of you right where you are. So fear not. Don't be afraid. He has summoned you by name. He has redeemed you, and you belong to him. Hey, God bless the rest of your day and the rest of your week.